I'm the Director of Research and Education for Swing Catalyst, Scott Lynn. Welcome my good friend Michael Dutro, coming to us from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he has a really cool indoor facility called Measured Golf. What we're going to talk about today is braking forces. I've seen a lot of really slow, not very good golfers who can put a decent amount of force into the ground, but they still swing it really slow. So what's the issue? If I'm putting a lot of force into the ground and it's not making it to the club, it's generally their ability to decelerate is not very good. Because if I could slow my body down and transfer that energy into the golf club, that's going to create a much more efficient speed. And that's what we're finding really high-speed players can do very well. Not so good players don't do so well.
So most of my life, living and growing up, I've driven a pickup truck, and it's not real fast. But I found out how to make things go fast in that pickup truck. If you get a deer to jump out in front of it, everything in the back seat very fastly moves towards the front seat when you smash on the brakes, right? So what I'm getting at here is that, to Scott's point, you see these golfers and man, they're Berkshiring this thing and they're getting all wound up and they're putting a ton of gas into this thing. And man, they're trying to just push as hard as they can to create as much speed as they can, because apparently to play good golf, I didn't know this, but apparently it just requires all the speed in the world and nothing else. So we're just trying to create speed on top of speed. And the problem is that your body will only help you create as much speed as it can efficiently and safely slow down. So what we need here is a safety brake, right? So if you can't stop it, you can't make it. And the problem that most people have is that they're constantly trying to put more gas into this thing without understanding where the brake actually exists. And I think that there's a lot of research that's going to come out by smart people like him, not dumb people like me. But luckily, I'm so dumb, I ask good questions every now and then. And what we're starting to see is we think that within the AP braking force, we're starting to see a correlation between where we go from moving that way and moving this way. There's a point in time in which that value goes to zero. So if we look up here at this awesome dual force plate graph, thank you. If we look up here, when we are moving this swing through, can you go ahead and take it through for me, please? Go to the top. And the transition, go ahead and start coming down. And we're going to go to torque plate 0 on the other side of that force. Right? Down there a little bit more. Try to get it right to where it's 0 if you can. And we missed it just so that's okay. So move it one back, please. Perfect. So when we're talking about what we're seeing within this braking force, assuming that it matches this player's style, what we're seeing is that this the vertical force starts happening at this 0. So what we're trying to say here is that what's happening when you're not moving side to side for a player that creates a ton of torque is that they start moving up and using that vertical force in that moment. And we're starting to see that there's a lot more conversations about when the best timing for these forces is, right? That's what everybody's trying to solve right now. When's the best time to do it? And what we've been lucky enough to see at Measured Golf, with help from my chief biomechist, Will Scruggs / intern, is that when we start really digging into the dual feet, which is something that luckily the SwingCat software allows us to do, when we start digging in a little deeper, we start seeing these correlations. So when we can kind of identify what braking system works best for a player, whether it's a junior, your middle of the road, 15 to 20, or your senior player who's not really playing very well at all and struggles to break 100, if you can start making this simple by getting them to understand where that brake goes and help them feel that a couple times, there's a very good chance they're going to be able to make it to the car after the lesson and go, hey, I actually think I can play better golf tomorrow. And that's, at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do. We're just using a very great, awesome tool that helps us learn these things to explain something that everybody that teaches golf does every day.
So tell me if this is off. So you get a player in here that doesn't have a very efficient braking system in terms of their torque.
Right.
What do you do?
So I think the biggest thing you got to do is you got to understand, does that braking system work best for them? Because just to show of hands, has anybody been here all week? Anybody? Anybody go to the Teaching and Coaching Summit? Okay. Anybody go to the Open Forum? Okay. No. Okay. So I'm not going to get into the linear braking system a ton, because if you've been here, you've heard all about that thing. And from a kinematic viewpoint, I get it. It's like the holy grail. We can go up, we can go down, we can gain a little, we can flatten it, we can send it, we can do it. That's great. Okay, but golf is inherently a rotary game, to Scott's point. And one thing that we know is that we stand next to the golf ball, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, it doesn't matter. We stand next to the golf ball. So golf becomes inherently rotary. And if golf is an inherently rotary game and we have somebody who needs to create more rotation to match either their vertical force if they're more front post or their horizontal force if they're more rear post, if that's what's, and by the way, the posting system, I want to give reference to Mike Adams. I appreciate his work in that, and that's what I'm referencing, so I don't want to pass that as my own. But if you're rear and you're horizontal, okay, that's not what we're talking about. But if you're more front and need some torque, then or center and need some torque, to Scott's point, and you don't do it, and we match that up, to your point, I think what you do with the neuromuscular re-education is unbelievable. I think those drills are great. I think also getting some cues, right? But most importantly, force precedes motion, but what precedes force is intent. And I think a lot of this starts with a conversation. So I know a lot of people would go, oh my God, I would never show that to a student, not once ever. And I argue that I show this to 10-year-olds and I break it down and I match the colors and I show them exactly what's going on. And while this is incredibly complex to me, and I mean that, I'm the dumbest guy here. I don't know why they let me get up on this stage, but you know, I can get 8 and 10-year-olds to look at some colors and go, oh, I get that. And it's not just what they get, but when you get the pressure up here with it, on top of that, what you really start seeing is that it starts correlating and they feel that. That's what they're doing, right? The golf club weighs less than the human body, I'm pretty sure, right? So I don't think that this golf club is acting on this. And this thing is 153 pounds soaking wet, I'm proud to say. And guess what? The ground weighs more than it. So the ground acts on this thing. So what do we feel, folks? We're going to feel the biggest force, in my opinion. Now, I don't have research on that, and I'm not the smartest guy, but that's what I believe, and that's what I sell, and that's what I teach. And if I can help a player understand their feeling through the ground, which is what's acting on them, I'm going to tell you, they get better. That's just what I believe. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's what I believe. So I think let's stop trying to pretend like our clients are dumb, and let's help them understand golf.
So I think that is something that most players struggle with. I would say the torque force, or learning to create those forward and backward shear forces. So if you go back to the peak,
Can
Drew,
I add one thing there real quick, though?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't think the player, I'm going to be careful.
Sure.
I don't think the player does anything wrong. I don't think the athlete does anything wrong. I think people come to us and we give them ideas, right? And I think I am guilty of that. I'm going to take the blame. I'm not going to say we, I'm not going to say us, they, them. I'm going to say me. I used to take a lot of people. I used to teach them from a top-down perspective because I didn't understand what was happening here. I couldn't see any of this as much as I tried, and I didn't really help people. But what I truly, truly believe here is that people have been inundated with frontal plane golf swings and linear golf swings to where we're trying to get it super high, and now everybody's trying to figure out how to get it back to the ball without, you know, this much forward shaft lean. And it's really problematic because I think on the tour level, you're seeing this play out at super high speeds to where the instruction and the technology hasn't helped educate enough. Because I can't find a player in a single, or I can't find somebody in a group on every group that has left wrist tape. Why do they have left wrist tape, Scott? Because this left wrist is injured. Why is the left wrist injured? Because they're trying to use their lead shoulder, their tricep, their shoulder, and their wrist to throw the break. This is a safety problem, folks. This is for real. Like, if you teach young people, don't hurt them, okay? Help them understand they've got to learn to do more of this. If you don't do that, they're going to do this. And then you're going to have this terrible thing that happens to us all the time. You know what happens to us? I travel all the time, folks. I travel 30 weeks a year. I go to all these amazing facilities. I have all these amazing partners. I love what I do. It's amazing. But I have children come to me that are 14, 15 years old. They're crying in every golf lesson they ever go to because their back hurts. Why does their back hurt? Because the person they're working with is telling them to do something that is hurting their back. Nobody goes around and hurts their own back. Please help them. Like, it's not that hard, guys. I'm dumb as shit. Sorry, I can't say that. I'm dumb, okay? Like, I'm not smart. If I am up here talking to you, you can do this. Get some plates, get a pressure mat, get whatever you can. Help. They get it, right, Scott? You see this?
Yeah, and I would say you're right. I mean, simple human motion happens in the sagittal plane, right? Like when we first start moving, it's all sagittal plane related. Frontal plane is a little bit more complicated motion, but a little bit easier. And That's the one that a lot of golf teachers are talking about now, right? We want to keep our center of mass back of the net force vector and give that thing angular momentum. But I would agree. I mean, frontal plane momentum, if all I produce is that, creates a lot of side bend, creates a lot of issues that
Mr.
could
James Lights calls it a cartwheel.
put us, cartwheeling.
He was one of the first people to identify that. And you see it. Look, I get where coaches are coming from. Some players don't need to pick up their left foot prior to impact. I totally agree. Not everybody should look like JT at impact. But there are players that can't move it fast enough, so they pick it up and get it out of the way. And you know what? Like, I've seen players do pretty well with that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that I would teach that style to everybody. I'm just saying we need more awareness, people. Like, that's it. That's all. I know I get preachy and I apologize, but I truly believe that if we raise the bar, people get better. If we stay the same, people get worse. Like, and we've been staying the same, man. I have my very young intern with me for the first time. This is his first PGA show. And the conversations we've had in the evenings have just been, quite frankly, humiliating. And it makes me feel bad because he has a lot of hope and he has a lot of encouragement and he has a lot of inspiration. And he came here and he has a lot of education as well. And he came here expecting to be motivated and inspired. Instead, he saw a bunch of stuff that everybody that was probably 50 years older than me has already seen. I mean, guys, it's the same story. It's the same thing. Like, the athlete is better. We know more about strategy. We know more about nutrition. We know more. Like, nobody's going to argue that the guy walking across the PGA Tour range today doesn't create a way better athletic profile than the guy 50 years ago. Why are the record books not being destroyed and lit on fire? Why is that happening? Because we're not teaching better. We're teaching the same. We got all these toys. We say the same thing. All we got to do is, like, let the person walk out the door, be curious, open this stuff up. I need a lot of time because, like I've mentioned a few times, I'm not very smart. So, like, I need to slow it down and look at it a bunch. But, like, if you take the time and you're curious and you want to help some people, get some plates, get some pressure, get some forces, whatever you got to do.
Right, and I think these dual plates, what has really helped us understand, or what we understand a lot better with the dual plates, is the individual contribution of each foot to those forward and backwards, or we call them toe-heel forces up here. So, Drew, if you could take that just to the peak of your two shear forces, go back a bit. So you can see right here, it creates the V in those forces. So you see how there's one force, this is the one coming out of his right foot, that's the reaction force that's pushing forward. And notice how that vector is a little bit smaller than the one coming out of his left foot. It's much bigger. So he's creating much more shear force coming out of his left foot than his right foot. And this is something we struggle with a bit to explain to students because it's an action and reaction issue. So this is the vector coming out of his trail foot. So in order for a reaction force to push towards the golf ball, what does the trail foot have to be doing to the ground? It has to be pulling backwards.
So here's a fun one that we do with everybody, right?
Sure.
I'm going to make you do it, though, because
Sure.
it's way too early for me.
Perfect.
Can we go live? Can you give me detailed data view, please? Layout, detailed data?
We moved the camera a little bit. Those vectors are off, but that's okay.
That's okay. I'm not going to do vector stuff.
Okay.
Just go detailed data for me, please. Big one.
Detailed data, just one down.
Sorry. I'm from Kentucky. I don't enunciate well.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. So here's the number one thing that I think makes torque really challenging for people. I think the words we've used are not so great. And here's what I mean by the words we use. Here's what I generally hear in golf lessons. You ready, Scott? Here's a golf club. Now, you're a new golfer. You've never played golf before. So here's what I want you to do. Hold that golf club for me, however you want. And I want you to go ahead and move right. And then I want you to move left. Okay. That's very confusing, I think, right? And the reason I think that's confusing because if you tell me to move right, I'm going to move right. If you tell me to move left, I'm going to move left. And generally speaking, I want to feel that in my kind of head where I'm getting my kind of navigation from. And to do that, I got to shift my spine. And I think for a lot of years, we've kind of confused what's happening relative to pressure versus what this spine is doing. And I'm just using the spine as a reference point. I'm not a spine expert. Please don't ask me about that. So what we're talking about here is when Scott is moving his pressure right and left to speak. Go ahead. Stand there for me. Now, we can see the center of pressure right here. So that's really cool. It's centered up and his spine's not moving. But if I say, once again, Scott, move right, okay, the pressure moves with it. If I say, Scott, move left, the pressure moves with the spine, right? But now watch this. So what I'm going to have you do, Scott, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Is I'm going to have you stand on your right foot, stand on your left foot. Stand on your right foot, stand on your left foot. Perfect. So that pressure's moving like crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want to happen. But now I want you to do this. I want you to keep your spine still and do that. No. Pick your feet up just like this, all the way up. All right, Scott's too old. He's got a kid on the way. He's got a lot on his mind. Move out of the way, Scott. Let me show you how you do this real fast. So now my pressure is going crazy, but my spine is relatively neutral. And that's how I teach people the difference between pressure and their body, right? Because they are different things. So we're not talking about kinematics when we talk about force plates. We're talking about pressures and forces. Pressures and forces. So if we're talking about pressures and forces, we got to explain to people what they actually feel. I started playing golf young. You started playing golf young. A lot of you started playing golf young. We got on a range with no tech. We hit some shots and we tried to figure it out. Nobody correlated that for us. Now we can correlate. We got 1,000 hertz. Does anybody know what that means? That means that's 1,000 pictures a second. Okay, think about your best cameras. They don't do that. We got 1,000 pictures a second. Can you throw a graph up for me there, please? You throw a graph up there for me, please?
Yeah, back to
anyone, doesn't matter. So when we look at these graphs, one of the things that I think is really cool, because we were kind of talking earlier about helping people identify what works best for them, is that when you look at these graphs, you kind of see here in the second graph, there's a little shakiness to that. Okay, that means there's something going on there in the brain that the body can't quite connect with, in my mind. That's what that means to me. So when we take that video to where we're at in the second graph there, where it's a little shaky, just where it starts going positive. Go ahead, keep going forward for me. Keep going. Keep going right there. So we see a little shakiness in that graph. So this is where I'm going to kind of look at, right? How easy did that get, folks? You don't even need a screening system for that. You just take a capture and look at stuff, right? So now all of a sudden we see a little shakiness, and that's pretty clean, right? Normally, if we're talking about somebody who has a big disconnect, this guy's obviously really,
Put me up there.
Yeah.
I got some shakiness.
You got some shaky? Get Scotty up there.
Put me up there.
Oh, boy. Here we go. Oh,
Actually,
that's not so bad.
put it on the total. Wow. Pretty impressed with myself.
Look at you. He's getting better.
Yeah.
He's been hanging out at Measured Golf, I've been told.
Go to the peak of my shear forces. I just want to see. I don't even know what they are. Okay.
Hey.
Well, this is an issue here for me. So you can see, if we went back to Drew, you could see that his left foot shown here had a lot more shear force than his right foot shown here. And you can see mine are about equal, 18 and 18. So that means there's really no net force on my pelvis. When he has 25 and 18, there's a net force shoving his pelvis back away. So having more shear force from your left foot than your right foot gives you that net force that pushes your pelvis back away from the golf ball and makes room for your arms and hands. 100%. This is actually pretty good for me. I think if you went back in time, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, I probably would have had more coming from my right from my left because I was classic.
When I literally first started looking at this with me, I'm super front post. Once again, by the Swing Dynamics, credit to Mike. He's actually the one that told me. Thank God, finally somebody did. But I broke my right leg as a young person, okay? So I spent 8 months on crutches. So I'm really front post, really front post. And when I started looking at this, I was literally trying to do everything with my lead leg. And while I am front post and I need to use my lead leg, to your point, I was getting way too much push out of my right. So if I'm getting way too much push out of my right, okay, it's really difficult for me. I literally can't get this thing to move out of the way because it's just not the right combo for me. So what I've been able to do with this and with other players is once again, whether you show this to somebody or not doesn't really matter. The fact that you know this and are capturing this is what's important. Because if you're capturing this, you can go back and look at it. If you can look at it, you can start to connect the pieces that you notice and observe with your clients and your students, and you can match up what they need to do, right? We could look at all these graphs, and honestly, I show graphs to a lot of people, and a lot of people always want to make everything 100 or make everything 0. They're nice and neat, they're clean, but this is what it is, right? This isn't a model. This isn't we say that you got to do it this particular way. All we're doing is saying this is what's happening, and this is what's causing the launch monitor to say what it says. Because we've got to understand that there is force preceding emotion. So you can look in all the cameras you want to look at, but they're not giving you the same information. It's not there yet. I mean, I know that there's a possibility way down the road, but we're not there yet. So if you're not looking at this stuff, then unfortunately, in my opinion, you're looking at about a third of the story, because I think the body contributes about a third, and I think the ground contributes about 2/3. And that's why I spend a lot of time looking at plates. That's why I made it the backbone of my business. I want to know.
Exactly. And some people struggle looking at graphs. I know a lot of people don't like to look at graphs. And so that's why we have the vectors up here. And so to explain this to somebody, you could see that my orange vector is pointing straight up in the air at this particular point, which means I'm not moving my pelvis or pushing my pelvis forwards or backwards. Drew, can you put yourself on a down the line one and show that similar position? Like right where those shear forces peak. And you'll watch that his vector now is going to be pointed back. Whoa, right there. Keep going, right there. So this one has a little bit of a lean to it back away from the golf ball, which is giving him that net force that pushes him back here and creates some space. And that's something that could be a physical issue. This is a thing that, like, with me, I know it is, because I've destroyed my left ankle playing ice hockey a couple years ago. And so I really struggle producing that left foot shear force, but now I know what to work on. And so I have some drills. This was just me messing around. I took a couple swings, but once I see that, I'm like, okay, I know what to work on. I know how to fix my issues and get my golf swing to where it needs to be. And it comes from playing on these plates and understanding this data really well.
But there's a giant monumental difference between this and lean
what
right.
Are we doing?
Lean right. I'm trying to not move your hip and move your spine right.
Oh.
That's not what we're talking about, though. Right? And that's where I think we really get confused a lot of times, is that, I'm not going to lie, they're expensive, right? But it helps. And I think you don't have to go all in. I think starting with a pressure is plenty. I mean, I wish I would have started that way. It'd have been a lot easier for me personally. But I think you got to look at this stuff, because I've watched so many people go, well, I don't have force plates, but I listen to Mike's podcast and I listen to or I watch Mike's YouTube videos, and now I think I get it. And now I'm going to get people to back it up. And they do that, right? And from a logical perspective, if you see that in the camera, you would assume that this is going this way, right? Mm-hmm. But all the pressure is there.
Right.
And you just can't see that, right? Unless you're looking at it from the ground up. And unfortunately, we just don't have the visual tools that we need with our eyeballs to do that.
Yeah, no one does. You can't see this stuff with your eye. That is for sure. Anybody have any questions for Michael?
Oh, we got any on there?
Questions.
Come on, somebody give me a question.
Somebody ask a question.
Ryan, how do you use your plates? Great question. What's my number one drill to add AP shear forces? I think that's a loaded question, but I'm gonna give it a go. Right. So I think once
Drew,
again we need to do an assessment to make sure that that's what they need, right? Because we don't want to do this to everybody if not everybody needs it. But I think if I was going to give somebody more AP shear, I think the biggest thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to attack it slightly different. Can we, one sec?
Yeah, he's coming back in a second.
Oh.
Just this one.
Yeah, thanks. When we get the normal view up here, I'll show you. So what I think is really important in terms of AP is I kind of look at there being a relationship between horizontal or side-to-side force, so moving away and towards your target. So I look at there being a relationship between that and torque, right? I think we all need vertical force because gravity is constantly pulling us down. So we're constantly having to stand up, so everybody needs vertical force. So we have to kind of pick, do we want more of this horizontal or do we want more of this torque? And in this particular case, we want more torque. So understanding that this is how we're going to go, in my opinion, and I'm not saying this is right, I would not go after torque. I would go after minimizing horizontal first to give them the opportunity and the need for the vertical torque. I really believe in trying to get people to do the work. I don't like doing it for them. They don't learn. Failure is the greatest teacher. Put them in a scenario they're going to fail out a whole bunch and they'll learn real quick. So anybody here have golf balls on their driving range that they're listening to? Anybody with golf balls out there? Come on now, raise your hands. Everybody's got golf balls. Wake up. All right, everybody's got golf balls, right? Okay, so if you got golf balls and you need something to put golf balls in, and generally we call that a den caddy. Okay, so if you got a den caddy, I mean, that's super high tech. I doubt any of you have ever heard of this thing. It's called a den caddy. Holds golf balls. Apparently most of you don't even have those. So get some golf balls first. Then you need a den caddy. Put that right here next to their left foot, okay? Because guess what? Vertical force has to travel through something. which is the lead tibia, because in most cases, vertical force contribution, as Scott was saying, we want it to kind of be a lot because we want to get moving and we want to stand up and get out of the way and create some extension through the lead side. So here we go. We got our den caddy, right? And now this guy's got, he's real used, right? What's Ryan? Hey, the guy that needs torque, what's he look like? This, right? Okay, so that guy's got no torque. Oh, well, here we go. We got a backpack.
It's not a den caddy.
Okay, so hang on. This crowd did not see golf balls. Has anybody ever seen one of these? Anybody? Okay, look at it. Now, most of you have this with you, so you can actually go out and help everybody today. And all you're going to do is you're going to take your golf bag and you're just say, I'm going to give you some vertical force. Because what most people do is they get like this, okay? Because guess what? They're trying to create angular displacement, okay? And they're trying to get this thing laid down like this. They're trying to lean on the shaft because they think they need a lot of forward shaft lean. That pressure backs up into the right side. They can't get out of the way to save their lives. Ouch, ouch, my back hurts. So now with the den caddy here, you're going to have them hit a few shots. That requires a golf ball. You got to get that before you can do the drill. So get your golf balls, do the drill, and literally just have them hit some golf shots and not be able to go that way. Because once again, the force has to travel through the tibia. If I'm getting my left knee moving that way and my tibia pointing over here, for all my friends that like kinematics and frontal plane torque, I got a force over here and I got my center over here and I just can't do anything other than slide. I'm never going to get my left hip to move backwards, never going to create any torque. So from a real basic perspective, I think going after the horizontal is a way better solution than going after the torque.
That's a good one. My go-to drill would be put the club behind you and turn this way. There we go. So I put this here. Go ahead, turn back, turn through. And if I can pull him over, he's not pushing hard enough with that left foot.
Mean today, man. Like, come on, give me a little love here. All
Go
right.
for it.
I'm gonna try this time. You ready?
Go.
Hang on.
Yep,
I'm
go.
strong. Oh, vegetarian.
Close.
Oh,
Okay, so he's learning. That was a lot better.
Okay, you want me to do one more?
One more.
I'm gonna think about a big steak this time. You
Go
ready?
ahead.
Here we go. Oh,
Perfect.
Look at
Okay.
that.
So now he's really learning how to push through that left foot and get that pelvis moving backwards.
My left
that's one
hip
that I
is
use
on fire. You know why? Because I used it.
You used it
You
there.
know what I haven't done all day?
Use it.
Used it. Because I'm like most human beings, I've been sitting on my butt all day.
Right. That's a really good one I've used. Last night, John Dunnigan was here doing a lecture, and he really helped me with a drill that I hadn't really thought of before. So step through this.
Which way?
Yeah, just step through it. Okay. And he put it around my calf,
Yeah. That's a good
and he
one.
said, do a backswing. Okay. Now turn through. Okay. Oh, yeah. Watch it. Okay. Again. So now I'm cueing closer to the ground and really teaching him to, because in order for him to push his leg back that way, he has to push his foot towards me. So this is a little closer to the ground, and he did this to me, and I really felt that left foot engage and get that forward and backwards or toe heel shear force. So that's another really good one.
I think another good one too is obviously you can go opposites too, right? So we can always, I mean, once again, I think the dual foot, right? Understanding the contribution of each leg, because some people do recruit from vertical force from the trail side as well, right? So I think it's important, like, look at how they contribute, look at each foot individually, and then figure out, like, refine your drills, right? We all have drills we love. I do too, right? I mean, I don't think necessarily I have that many preferences anymore when it comes to how a golf swing looks, as long as there's like a biomechanical reason that makes sense for it. But one thing I do really work hard on is my drills, because I'm really lazy with them, because they're the best substitute teacher ever. I can give somebody a drill and I got a 5-minute break to go use the bathroom in a lesson. So it's great that we have all these drills at our disposal. Scott's got an amazing tool right here. I mean, it's freaking a rubber band, right? So, I mean, the tools that are needed to do this stuff aren't that complex, but I think the complexity of drills and giving drills is that making sure they're the right drill at the right time. And I just don't understand how you would really hone that in without being able to understand what drill is really going to work in the best plane of motion for them.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Anybody, come on. What else do we know? We'll pick on people.
Everybody's tired.
I know.
It's getting long. All right, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank
That was
you.
awesome.
Appreciate it.